So what's all this stuff right here then? Today we're going to build a homemade pressure tester for this two-stroke engine. We've got a Mighty Vac pressure and vacuum gun, 5 meters of water hose, a couple of hose clamps, an air fitting, and also this brass reducer from the bathroom section, all available at my local hardware, except for this one was from Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description below. Alright, so the first thing that you want to do is remove the carburetor from the intake of the engine. Then you need to find something that you'll be able to put in the intake of the engine and clamp it down to form a seal. And that's where this little brass fitting comes from. So we measure the intake, and this one is just over 20 millimeters inside diameter. So we try and find something from your local hardware just over 20 millimeters outside diameter. And this was pretty much the perfect size. So as you can see, this will go in there and be clamped down our intake and give us a nice airtight seal for our vacuum and pressure pump. So let's get building this thing. Alright, very simple. One end of your hose goes over the pressure pump with a hose clamp and tighten it down. Alright, before we get too much ahead of ourselves, the first thing that we have to do is combine this with this. So I'm going to sand or file down some of the threads on this air fitting so they can slide inside each other, and then we can epoxy it together to form an airtight seal. The other thing that we need to do is remove the exhaust off the head and make a blocking plate for the cylinder head to stop the air getting out that side as well. So that way we have a completely sealed system. So here we are with the finished result. Our exhaust backing plate, 2 holes drilled in it and some rubber glued on to the back. We'll put a washer on top of each of these to take up any slack. And here we are with our 2-in-1 fitting. So that's an air fitting on the brass reducer, glued in with some 5-minute epoxy. Now, next thing to do is put it all together. We can cut down our hose. We definitely do not need 5 meters of it, maybe only 1 meter. It is good for other stuff, this thing, and the shorter it is, the harder it is to work on. Remember, you might want to do this in your bike, not right next to it like I am. So 1 meter or about 3 feet is probably a really good length to start with. Here we are with the finished result, all ready to plumb this side into the intake, tighten down the rubber, and then hopefully a little bit of pumping is going to tell us the condition of this engine. before you start this, it is important that you do it with the piston at bottom dead center. That's at the piston at the bottommost part of its stroke. So take your spark plug out, drop something in to measure it. This is a quarter drive socket extension. Now I rotated it by the kickstart just to make sure it was at the bottom of the stroke. If you have the cover off, you can turn the assembly by hand and do it that way. It doesn't have to be exact. Just drop it down, make sure it's at the bottom, put your spark plug back in and tighten it up so you do get that airtight seal. Now that we have the pressure tester connected to the intake of the engine, we can start by applying pressure. Now you want no more than 5 psi, and when we're pumping it, it's not holding pressure and I can actually hear air escaping. So what we'll do is get some soapy water, and as we pump, we'll look for the leak. So it's not there, but if we throw it here, we can see it. What we have here is a small air leak. Now it is on the intake and it's right between the intake and the cylinder head. Hopefully we can tighten up the small Allen key screws and close that gap, and that should be the end of our air leaks. Fingers crossed. Okay, so try as we might, we've tightened up the intake and there is still a very, very minor leak right at the base of the intake and the cylinder head. So from here we have to pull the intake manifold off and give it a bit of an inspection to see what might be the problem. Okay, so here it is. Appearance, doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it. It's probably just really, really old, and to be honest with you, I'm not too surprised there is a slight leak. It's probably the very first time that the engine has been worked on, because as you know, we got this bike and it wouldn't run. So we'll give it all a bit of a tidy up, a bit of a clean up. We might use some RTV, I'm not too sure, because I really just want to get this bike running well enough to pass registration. And then the plan is to put a 70cc kit through it anyway. So we'll see what we got. Nice clean up, nice tidy up. Hopefully that fixes the problem and we can move on. Alright, so we've taken the intake off, we've cleaned down all the components, the reed cage, the intake, and we've just applied a very, very, very slight film of RTV and let it dry for about 2 hours. You can see I've got it all plugged back in now, and let's see if it holds pressure. Time to apply some pressure. So we're only going to pump it to about 5 psi. And the pressure's going up. Right now we're sitting dead on 5 psi. So we'll leave that and see if it holds for a few minutes and see what happens. go. So the test is done and it held 5 psi the whole time through about 7 to 8 minutes. I'm really happy with that. So it passes the test. Flying colours really. There's no more leaks in it. We've fixed them all. So we can release the pressure and then we can turn the knob and we can then do it again in vacuum. So we'll do that as well. We'll pump it up. And we'll run the timer again. And that's pretty much done for this episode. So just to recap what we've done, we've made a homemade pressure tester using a Mighty Vac pressure and vacuum pump, some hose, just some general fittings that we found at the hardware. We filled the cylinder with pressure. It didn't hold pressure, and then we checked for leaks with some soapy water. We made the adjustments, retested again, and it passed. That's pretty much it. So again, I'm going to call it an end to this episode. Like, subscribe, leave a comment if you learnt something or just to say g'day. And next episode, we're going to give this motor a good service, go right through the CVT, make sure everything is good to go there, and then I guess it's put it all back together. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.